3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Poetry Lit, because tonight we kick off the Poetry Lit Festival, celebrating 5 incredible years of poets, words, and community. This is our way to look back, to enjoy, and to say goodbye. For after these 2 days of poetic festivity, Poetry Lit will stop, at least in its current incarnation. Poetry Lit started when the world stood still and we mostly saw each other through screens. It was the summer of COVID when I felt I needed something poetic to stay connected and creative, and so Poetry Lit was born. Back then, sitting behind a laptop in my attic, I could never have imagined that Poetry Lit would take such a flight. We've had an amazing journey. We welcomed absolutely brilliant poets. We were joined by a warm and faithful community that literally spans the globe. We've had poets missing in action. We've been Zoom bombed. We've had young poets take their first step behind the open mic. And on a personal high, we got to do a live broadcast from the Stanza Festival in Scotland. But most precious of all, I believe, are the relationships forged or strengthened through poetry. And tonight you get to hear from the people that helped make Poetry Lit into what it has become. You may know some of them, and perhaps you encounter a new face, because tonight we are in full capacity. Ian, Lydia, Walco, Stephanie, and myself will read from our work and ask each other questions, sharing stories, and explore the poetry that brought us together. After that, as per our tradition, we have 3 open micers that will close off this session. Over the festival, you'll hear voices from across the world in English, in Spanish, and beyond, with readings, roundtables, and playful collaborative experiments. Thank you for being here live, online, free, and open to all, the spirit of Poetry Lit in full force. So let's begin and celebrate poetry together. And we begin with Ian. Ian's first collection, Ping, came out with Write Bloody UK in 2021. He's currently working towards a practice-based Doctor of Fine Arts in creative writing at the University of Glasgow, where he's exploring our 21st century post-truth world through the likes of Wittgenstein, Bernstein, pragmatics, and cheesy advertising slogans. Now, you know I always do a personal reflection, but this time I wanted to up the personal. Ian, you have been with us literally from the first hour. You made your debut on the open mic, I think, or at least your debut with Poetry Lit, and I think within the year you were a featured poet. Moreover, our friendship transcended the screen, and we got to hang out in real life in Utrecht and Rotterdam. As a poet and as a friend, you are a force of nature. Thank you for being here. And Ian, you also know our other tradition, that we ask a question before the reading starts. And you know the question I'm going to ask, because I've been asking this since the beginning of this year. And I wanted to not to deny you the opportunity to answer a really hard question. So Ian, in your opinion, how can poetry change the world?
Hello, Miller. Thank you for that. I'm a bit choked up by that. And also very embarrassed for 2 reasons. First of all, I gave a clapping emoji for you, and just as you said my name, so it appeared like I was clapping myself, which I wasn't doing. And secondly, I completely forgot you were going to ask this question. However, I think I feel a bit bad answering this question like this because I know how much it means to you. But to me personally, I think that poetry only changes the world in the same way that other amazing artworks do. So for me, when I hear an amazing piece of music or when I go to the cinema and see an amazing film, it changes my world in that way. And to me, that's what poetry does. And I can't say anything more profound than that, unfortunately.
Well, I think that's as profound as we need it to be. So thank you. And please, for the last time, read us some of your poems.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I mean, I was there on your first one. I mustn't waste my time by talking about how great that was. I can talk about that another time. I am going to start by reading a poem that basically tells you about my the torture that I have between being a commercial writer and wanting to write beautiful things. So this poem is called Copywriter's Lament. It has a line in it called Daddy or Chips, which was a strapline of some chips, funnily enough, French fries. Copywriter's Lament. As if no words exist in the world aside from those tapped from the tips of the greats, we can't all be great. As if Daddy or Chips papered itself to the walls of our lives by chance. As if poets can make money. As in, poets can't make money. As in, if I had $1 for every person who asked, what do you write? I'd have almost as much as I got for that villanelle about Adele's broken larynx, which was a good gig, but nowhere near what I've spent on learning how to write villanelles. As in, advertising's vulgar. Don't think I don't know, but there's no day job for us not to give up when our line breaks, glitch, no bar to retreat to, no loco to go to, no project to manage, no staff room to hide in, no patients to care for while licking our wounds. We're Screwfix. Sorry, force of habit. We're screwed. We could have saved lives, built ships, painted words on our terms, but got dazzled by exclusives, didn't read the small print, and now have to write it for pet shops, fridges, laptops. As in, let's give ourselves a break. As in, if we have no instructions for breaking glass, how can we emergency exit? This next poem is called Free Poem. Thank you for your feedback. I understand how this might have been confusing, and I am happy to clarify. The £1 fee you see is a processing fee, which is separate from the cost of the poem. This is a distinct charge and does not impact the fact that your poem is still free for the first 10 minutes. You'll also pay a flat service fee, which is 90p, and a £1 unlocking fee. These are distinct from the processing fee and the cost of your poem, which is free. Thank you. Now, in advertising, if you have a dark market, it's a market where you can't actually do things like TV advertising or poster advertising, and so the marketers find nefarious ways to talk to you instead. So this poem is called Dark Markets. Not some speakeasy, but a drafty market, accessed by secret knock through illicit billboard, shelf dense with restrictions, depictions of everything they need to sell you banned. So instead, fancy fag cartons dressed pinkly like parfum, mood lighting in every flavour of vape, stout glass as rugby ball, tannoy piped taglines, your dealers gleaming pearlies, sponsored by a dentist in Turkey. Thank you. I'm going to read 3 haiku now from Ping, which I don't, oh yes, here it is. From this, which is like 4 years old now. But it turns out that actually the stuff that I'm writing about now, commercial stuff, started there. So these haiku are called Milks. Oat. Golden barley fields, rain plumped, dehusked and rebirthed. Porridge for coffee. Soy. Sprawling Cerrado, lost to deforestation and curdled hot drinks. Cow. What to do today? Munch grass, let supermarkets squeeze teats and profits. This next poem isn't specifically about advertising, it's about artificial intelligence. The stuff that I'm writing about at the moment is kind of a mixture of, well, it's all about our post-truth world, and let's face it, the internet doesn't tell you anything truthful anymore because it's all written by AI. This poem is called Damn. I teach programs logic for a living so programs can chat to humans, and after I relax with the algorithm, and this time it's orphaned beavers in rehab building clutter dams with whatever's to claw, piling knives, forks, spark plugs, a jelly shoe, plant pots, the remote into homeware blockades between oversized fridges and pouchy stained sofas, their instinct to nest, pool fish, not get eaten by wolves, apparently triggered by dripping taps, the swish swash of dishwashers, an evolutionary trait passed on by kid-bearing forebeavers, no logical chain, just hardwired decisions to pile up sticks, move them from the riverbank, submerge an entrance, and make the torrent stop. I've just realized that my explanation for that would have made no sense to anyone here whatsoever, so I maybe have to reframe that one. Good learning. One of the other things that I'm doing in this collection that I'm working towards now is taking advertising slogans and then writing responses to them. This one that I'm going to read you now isn't, you don't hear the headline, the advertising headline in it, but I need to explain that because the headline was so awful that I wrote part of this poem really badly. So it's intentionally bad, I promise. Sunscreen saver. Strawing down my pixel colada, breaking waves make lazy links with bubbled milk in my hurricane, which is a type of glass, not a foreshadowing of what's to come. See as far as your eyes can, and bluer than RGB blue. The sun's a chunk of pineapple. Seriously though, it's very beautiful here. No need to consider whether all that exists is a byproduct of code or just my ripped torso's real and this influx of tourists all Sims. They say if we do live in a simulation, our overlords are either advanced descendants of an original race or programmers in the next universe up. How could we ever know? I tap the glass. What we need's a bad simile, a sign. Thank you. I do have one more. Have I got time, Mila? I didn't actually set my timer. So one more. This is actually also from Ping, and it was quite nice, but because it connects to the one that I've just read. And it was also quite nice revisiting Ping because I read this poem and thought, oh, I quite like that one. It's about a Renaissance artwork called CSS Francine, a Renaissance style artwork called CSS Francine, which CSS is obviously code. And when you look at this artwork through a Chrome browser, it looks different to when you look at it through Safari or Opera or something like that. And I thought that was an interesting metaphor for how people see us and how we see other people. Browsers. This waxy Renaissance beauty confirms what I have long suspected. No man is a flat pixel, and we cannot be saved as files. We are pure code, each of us line after line of hypertext and style sheets at the mercy of other browsers. Who programs us is a bigger question, of course, and one no Chrome nor Opera can render. The big script kid in the sky, a million virtual monkeys, whatever. The point is this: we can tweak our perfect code. People read us as they will. Thank you very much to everyone for listening, and thank you, Mila, so much for an amazing 5 years.
Thank you so much, Ian. That was amazing. And did I ever, you triggered me with your bad commercial slogans. Did I ever tell you about why I don't drink Jupiler beer anymore?
No.
Because their slogan is Jupiler, men know why. Like, apparently you don't want me as your customer.
Well, we used to have Yorkie. We used to have, well, the Yorkie one used to be, in the UK, used to be, it's not for girls. It's crazy. I mean,
Okay, well.
not that long ago either.
So, Ian, I think we have your question asker ready. Lydia.
Yes. Oh, Ian, thank you. That was such a pleasure to hear. They're so different when I can hear them in your voice too. Right. So the word that comes into my mind as I listen and it's thinking of what you're concerned with, and then what I'm going to read in a minute, is the idea of exposure, and that somehow I see that you're exposing what language is doing and where we're going and what's happening in this post-truth world. And so what do we do in the face of it? So what do I do when I'm writing about Viking graves in the light of this post-truth world? Like it feels like you're in touch with what's going on? And I'm just in touch with the past. Anyway, go on, talk about the present and the past and what the poet trapped in between them. What does she do?
Well, first of all, I don't think you're trapped in the past whatsoever. I mean, spoiler alert, Lydia and I have been on quite a few courses together anyway, haven't we? I think, aren't we trying to do the same, similar things, just with very different reference points? So, and I mean, I'm trying to expose some kind of truth here, although I'm spending the next 2 years finding out what truth it is I'm trying to expose. I mean, I have no idea. But I'm trying to tell a story, and you're trying to tell a story, aren't you? And when I read your poems and when I'm in a class with you, I learn so many things that I would never know about if I first of all didn't read the poem in the first place, and then secondly also when I hear explanations of it as well, or when I go and read up on it. So I think we're just exposing, exactly as you just said, then exposing, yeah, we're exposing truths, I think, which is really helpful because I'm going to write that in my essay later. So thank you for that question. But I think that's what we're doing. We're doing the same thing, just using different references, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, well, I hope so. That's so heartening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Ian, I think because you are very, very to the point in your answers, we may have time for another question. So I'm not, if any of the other poets have something they want to ask Ian, otherwise I can give you a really hard question. But anyone wants to ask Ian something? Or do you want to see what he's going to do with my difficult question?
That's the difficult one. I mean,
I'm
they've
not
all
sure.
been difficult because I didn't
Yes,
prepare for this bit, didn't do my homework in this.
and it's not more difficult than how can poetry change the world. No, I was thinking about what you said about post-truth, and I wondered if you could speak to us a little bit on how you see the relationship between poetry and truth.
Can you come back to me in 2 years?
Sure. Yeah.
No.
We'll do the whole thing again.
No, I think so. This is really interesting. I mean, so it started off when I started this project is because I am a copywriter, and in a lot of, well, sort of a copywriter now. I am a copywriter, and one of the things you have to do is talk about truth in a roundabout way, let's face it, because a lot of the stuff that you have to write about when you're advertising is you can't really say what the client wants you to say, or you can't really say what's really true about it. So I started off by thinking, it would be fun to kind of expose the the brands for what they are. But of course, when you start looking into truth, what is truth? What is truth? However, one thing that I've been looking into Charles Bernstein recently, and one of the things that I think is very interesting is when a poem. So there's the idea of a poem telling a truth. So, that which could be my truth, like something that I want to say, or it could be a historical fact or something like that. But I'd never really thought about it in the way that Charles Bernstein talks about it before, which is that the truth comes from the language itself as well, which I didn't know about. So I thought and I'm very thankful to one of my tutors who put me onto that, because he could clearly see, I come from a linguistics background, excuse me, a linguistics rather than a literary background. So whenever I look at a poem, I generally look at it from the point of view of what are the words doing, what's the syntax doing. And so for me, it's really interesting to see a poem come to life through the language, which I think Lydia mentioned as well. It's something that I hadn't even thought about or considered myself. But now that I'm starting to look at other poets who've done that, I can see another way of truth coming through in poetry. So I think there's loads of connections between poetry and truth and advertising. And those are just some of the ways that I can describe them in 2 minutes, really.
Well, thank you so much, Ian. And if you are watching and you haven't had, you want more of Ian, which I can totally imagine, you'll be doing a poetry in session tomorrow at 17:30 British summertime, so do check in for Ian's session. He's hosting some wonderful poets. And now it's my honor to introduce to you Lydia Harris, who has also been with us for a long time with Poetry Lit. So Lydia Harris has made her home in the Orkney island of West Ray. Her second collection, Henrietta's Library of the Whole Wide World, was published by Blue Diode in 2024. And Lydia, each time I see you, I am reminded of how your bio says you see the North Sea out of one window and the Atlantic out of the other, and that always makes my imagination, spring to life. And even though that can seem remote, you being in Orkney, you always feel close and near, no matter the seas and the screens that separate us. And you have been with us for most of our journey, been a featured reader, but also stepped in whenever we needed. And especially the last year, I think you stepped in several times. So thank you so much for all that you did for us. And Lydia, you know what's coming. I'm also going to ask you how poetry can change the world.
Yes, thank you. So all sorts of answers have gone through my head, but I think I'm thinking on what Ian said, and I think I think poetry has already changed the world. Chaucer took the language and did things with it, and it is the language that we're speaking now, or similar to. And the person who wrote down Beowulf, or the people, the Norse folk who scribbled or didn't scribble but carved runes in Maesau here in Orkney. So people have taken the language and they've worked it and wrought it, and all the time, I suppose all of us want what's going on inside our head to come close to what's coming out of our mouth, and that it's a great gulf, and you'll spend your whole life trying to bring the two together, but I think poets are always trying to bring it together, and people like Shakespeare and and William Blake, they got quite close to fetching those together. Yeah, so that's my answer.
Wow, thank you so much. I like that. And I also like your approach that you really take a language approach to that. So that's wonderful. And now we, of course, can't wait to hear your poetry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. You've been so kind to include me and involve me, and I've really valued all the connections. So here goes with my poems. So if you were to look up the database for Scottish historical sites under peerable links, Westry being the island where I live, this forms part of what you'll find describing what an archaeologist would call a deviant or prone burial. So this is the quotation from the database. Cemetery, Viking, ID 2768, grave 2, April 1839. This grave was excavated on the same day. The bones of the female inhumation were in very poor condition, but apparently lay face down. The artifacts found in apparent association comprised a ring-headed pin, 2 tortoise brooches. The prone woman at the year's tipping point. Her hands are a bone code under her chest. And though the light prods and a charge passes from thumb to finger, she doesn't move. For what does she have to show? On my stone, I drew the line that others might appear. Also the gorse, stormy petrels, they wear dark clothing. These rosettes placed to rest on the walls. I enter a broken circle and the wind's keyhole, and now my fingertips have walked, grooves overlapping the plan of my weather. 2 pows, smell of smoke, the rim, this foreshadowing in hollow ways, in patterns on the surface, stars through the open roof. Bones in a sand-blown field, open to every point of the compass. The prone woman has heard the sea hustle, the sand and the shingle close by her ear. She cannot stir or stare. Her bones are still where they laid her, the flesh melted away that once drove the beat of her heart, the flow of her blood. She is long dead, but new found in the dunes, the back of her skull skywards. She gained a foothold northward, stumbled and fell, they buried her in wind-blown sand, face down, prone, to see nothing but grain on grain of mica. She will lie in the dunes, this woman who speaks to the tide. She is sprung from the ship of her body. She can't walk to the well. She will die in 3 days, enter into the ring of quartz pebbles. Be knit to skin. I want to hear her body, her circling spirits of goat herders, weavers, and bakers. Within the stone walls, she tautens the warp till it rings. She is lying face down, her bones are gone, and the gold pin, her shadow creeps through the door. Her spirits have already come. She plats bast into a basket for her cold stone baby. Runes for inviting the sun into the house. Rune for the door and the bolt. Rune for the swing on the hinge. Rune for the line between shadows. Cloud rune. Rune cut into the lintel. Rune scored on the path. These runes on a sheet of birch. Rainwater rune. Rune on the back of the flounder. Rune for the light on the table. Rune for the loaf. And the comb and the crumb rune, hearth rune, disc rune to wear at the throat, blank rune for fog and storm blowing in, 7 runes scratched with a pin on a whalebone, seed rune swollen and burst, rune for pelt and fleece, rune for wrapping the child, the rune for stroking its feet, the rune for rising from sleep. Who do you allow yourself to be? Answer me, woman, face down in the dunes. Your ochre-stained skull doesn't turn. Your shoulders are unpinned, your bones slack. Say what I don't want to hear. Let us cross the wasteland while you scatter seed. Call for your mother in the empty house. The goldfinch, a twitter, a hop, hop on the wall, and the sea shrinking from the reach of you. So there I'll stop. Thank you for listening. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. I think it's always a good sign when I, as a timekeeper, forget the time. And that happened with you. I was so enthralled in your reading. So Volko is going to ask you a question.
Yeah, so what I find so fascinating in your work is that you look at objects and things as animated, almost yeah, alive, full of symbolism and meaning. Suppose that you would come back in 100 years and then describe our digital computer age with the same lens. How would you how would you see the surface around you?
Oh, that's such a brilliant idea. I definitely think I ought to take the prone woman. And so I think I would I would like to imagine my MacBook Air with its sleek silver surface. I'd like to imagine that being excavated by some archaeologist in, I suppose, 100 years. But anyway, I'd like to imagine that transported into the future. And what would the prone woman make of it? Because the Viking Age people were great lovers of silver. So I think a MacBook Air would go down a storm in a Viking longhouse. Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks.
So Lydia, I'm just taking my space here because I can. But I was wondering, when or how does poetry come alive for you?
Oh, I think it's when a pair of words maybe attach themselves to an object. And so I've been listening to archaeologists and archaeologists talking quite a lot this week. And just sometimes the language that they use to describe like a polished mace head. And somehow I'm beginning with a poem. Yes. And I think museums and museum labels are they're just full of poetry. Because I think I'm a very thing-based person. I'm not very ethereal. So
But I love that. We were in a museum in Colombia, and they have these labels that are translated from the Spanish, and they're not always translated correctly. So there was one painting that wasn't called Untitled, but Untitled, Untitled. And I have written that down because I want to write a poem that's just called Untitled.
yes,
Yeah. So Lydia, you will kick off the festival tomorrow with the first poetry in session at 1:30 British Summer Time. And you also have three wonderful poets that you'll be hosting. So everyone, check it in your calendars and watch it on our Facebook and YouTube page to get your fill of poetry. So moving on to our next poet, Volko. Volko van Loon is a musician, writer, and Silicon sorcerer. I'm realizing now, Volko, I have the wrong bio for you, so I'm just gonna
I
quickly
didn't
see.
change that much.
But it was so nice. So, but oh, now I cannot. Let me see if I can quickly find it. Otherwise, I will just read out. Yes, there we go. I'm sorry, guys, but here, this one is better, I think. Volko van Loon is continuously alternating between his digital alter ego and a poet with a body. And Volko and I go way back. He, I think, owns the title of being my oldest friend, and not oldest in the sense of age, but oldest in the sense that we know each other the longest, because we met about 30 years ago when the world was still analog. One of the things that connected us was our shared love for poetry. We even debuted on the same poetry night. Volko, you have been with us usually behind the scene, lending tech support when needed, and in return, Poetry Lit seems to have fanned the poetic flame for you. For the past year, you have been writing away, and now will share your poems, which I'm very excited that you will do. But before you get to read your poetry, you two must first answer this question, difficult but true. No, So in your opinion, how does or can poetry change the world?
Yeah, so I think indeed poetry has changed the world, and maybe now the impact is slightly more like individualized. But I do think, and I think this group is also, or community is a sign of that. Like it is now more the long tail of impact, I would say. So lovers of poetry can find each other and in fact inspire each other in a way that probably the broadcast type of poetry from the past didn't. So that I think that's probably how poetry should continue to change the world. Yeah, bit by bit, maybe I should say, to stay in my
Nice pun.
in my tech in my tech bubble.
So for the people who are wondering what the bit by bit pun is, I think it's time to share some of your poems.
Yeah. So I will not give too much away, but I think approaching technology from a slightly different angle than Ian. So I'm kind of on the dark side. I've been in IT and technology for a long time, and I'm slowly coming back to like the world of the poets with a body. And that's, I think, a nice transition that's being made. I'm working on a bigger collection of poems that are about like the impact of technology and also its parallels with religion. So I'm gonna read some of those and then one golden oldie. So, the first one is Liturgy for the Tech Gods. Liturgy for the Tech Gods. We welcome the silicon. We welcome you, slim-waisted silicon. We welcome the neural nets into the room, waiting for their bits to settle in. We welcome the water coolers. We welcome the 42-inch racks, mounted on our thick concrete floors. Silence, to wait for the network to unfold and have electricity run its course. The spinning of the fans is our call to prayer. A candle is lit. Let the LED lights sing, a big resounding hallelujah, and the circuit boards swing, a bite dance around the altar. Our green valley is the trap for the gradient descent. Lead us, tech lords, through this treacherous territory, the slippery GPU, thy shall cast computation on computation. The next one is meditation on bean counting. So they have, all the poems have a slightly different religion as inspiration. Imagine a bowl with beans. This many bits can be reflected, counted, sorted, a mirror image of reality. Digital is physical. We seem to have lost that connection when we wait for the tokens to reflect our predictions, confirm our positions. The network is a reflection of what we once thought. We kneel in front of it because it communicates, like a collective consciousness. It radiates wisdom stochastically. My body. My body is a temple of neurons. The fat, the tissue, the bones limping along, the blood flooding. What is decomposed is not less, just different. My body be a temple of transistors, capacitors charged, circuits humming, electrons buzzing, fans blazing. I'm alive. My spirit. A few training samples are used to generate this perfect representation. Dotted, dotted, dot. The pixels just reflect me. Bias constructor. A modern sutra. Find, detach the following documents. a token of appreciation, a sign of the times. They are a-changing. And finally, I'm on to my next and last poem, Typography. Once, morphemes leaned into meaning, letter by letter. Some confidently carved into stone, some stumbling into existence, short of breath. Now they are flooding out, bite by bite, character by character, failing to stick around. Without limits, hashtags are pounding on screens, infinite scrolling, 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 scrolling. We have total expressiveness. We have no bounds but the wetware. We have been reduced to hashtags, surrounded by bots. Trolls fueled infinite feeds, frame, flame by frame. The empty empire of zeros and ones. Our stories got overwritten by counterfeit bits and unsound bytes. We can express all languages in Unicode, pull out emoticons for every event, but we lost the ability to absorb the glyphs. Instead, we're praying for singularity to restore the dignity of the written word. Thank you.
Thank you, Alpo. It was absolutely amazing. And I think the first time you are sharing, except for the last poem, because you read that before, but the first time you are sharing so widely your poetry. How are you feeling?
Very good. Yeah.
Very good. There you
Yeah.
are.
I feel like a preacher though, but but
Well,
maybe, yeah, I think even with recent events that are happening worldwide, I feel it's even more, yeah, urgent at the moment. Yeah. Yeah. Even more than when I wrote them.
so Stephanie has prepared a question for you, I believe.
Yes, Walco, I know that you play the saxophone, and in fact, I've heard you improvise in Amsterdam
Mhm.
at Mila's launch at the Perdue Bookshop. So my question is, what is the difference, or what are the similarities of composing music and writing poetry?
That's a good question. So I think the similarities is, at least with me writing poetry, is that it's like really and starts as an improvisation. So both, yeah, playing the saxophone starts from like an idea that kind of iterates and then becomes more real and real and real. The differences I think is with the saxophone playing is really that you yeah, come out of your head into your body. Well, for me, indeed, poetry keeps me a little bit up here. So uh, for me, saxophone playing is like more a full body experience. So, and in that sense, like everything participates. It's very close to singing. So yeah, you need energy. You also get energy if you play. And with yeah, poetry, there's a different mindset. Also, write it using a computer. That's also a big difference. So I think, yeah, for the Zen experience, I think the saxophone is really the best way to let go of creative energy.
Thank you. Mila, can I ask a second question? Walco, what has being a member of Poetry Lit given you?
A lot of inspiration and new poems, I think. So it was, yeah, so sometimes I was like, yeah, actually kind of felt inspired to create a poem just in time before I could read it the next edition. I'm not very structured in my writing generally, so when I have like external goalposts, that works best. So I think that has done it for me. Also, I think being in the tech world is using very different jargon, and if you have been in that industry for a long time, you start to think differently. So getting in touch with people who have like very different vocabularies and think very differently has been very much enriching experience for me. And seeing people from all over the world, like from islands in the distant oceans, I think that's super inspiring.
Thank you.
And of course, meeting you all as friends, almost. Yeah, as friends.
Of course.
That was the answer we were hoping
Yes.
for.
Yeah.
So Walco will be, I think, also present at the festival tomorrow, but backstage again. So if you want more of Walco's poems, you have to write him and tell him to read more often. So I will now introduce Stephanie Green. Co-curator of Poetry Lit, is English-Irish and lives in Edinburgh. Her most recent pamphlet, Ortelius' Sea Monsters, won the Wigtown Festival Alistair Reid Prize in 2023. And Stephanie and I were also brought together by poetry, and that predates Poetry Lit about a year. We met at the wonderful Anna McCarrick retreat in Ireland and stayed friends on Facebook. And you know, sometimes that's just what happens, but I think fate had something different in store for Stephanie and for me, because Steph was present at the first Poetry Lit and became involved with the organization soon after. Steph has been my co-host and co-conspirator ever since, scouting featured poets with her fine sense for poetry. Steph, you have formed the heart of Poetry Lit, metaphorically, but also in a more literal sense, because you lead the Q&As that quite quickly became a centric and favorite part of our sessions. Thank you for all that you brought to and gave to Poetry Lit. And you also know what's coming, the hardest question of them all. How can poetry change the world? What do you think, Steph?
Well, I think it can and it can't. So it's a yes and no answer. I don't think poetry can change the world in the same way that, say, Sir Joseph Bazalgette, who implemented the London sewage system, did, or the invention of anesthetics, or the discovery that cholera is waterborne, and it's important to have clean, unpolluted water. On the other hand, poetry can raise consciousness and draw attention to issues which later lead people to make changes, either politically or socially. I don't think ranting is the answer in poems. You have to appeal to hearts as well as minds. And I'm not talking about poetry as mushy sentimentality. The best poetry combines the left and the right side of the brain. Our technological society, sorry, Walco, and concentration on sordid gain is too focused on the analytical side of the brain and not on the intuitive. Poetry is an experience that can change you. It can make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It can smite the imagination of your heart. I've nicked that from the King James Bible. So as you can tell, poetry is my replacement for religion. I think poetry works best at an intimate level and speaks from one individual to another. It's a great consolation to know that somebody else has suffered the same way as you or has undergone similar traumas. It also speaks in a way that might not be possible otherwise, coming at its slant or by suggesting the unsaid. Poetry creates empathy with others who come from a different culture or are different from you. Poetry therefore creates compassion and kindness, which is lacking in our world. and much needed.
Wow, thank you for that thoughtful reflection and extra bonus points for the use of the word smite, which I think is a great word. So please read us some of your words.
I'm going to read from my pamphlet, Ortelius's Sea Monsters. It was inspired by a map of Iceland, which I saw in Akureyri in North Iceland. The map is made in 1590 by one Ortelius, and it shows the whole of Iceland surrounded by its seas, and they are full of mythological monsters, very weird creatures, and some which are obviously whales. I'll show you a picture of the cover, which is just a little corner of the map that shows some of these monsters. So you can see these online. If you Google, you can find them if you're interested. And I also have pictures of them on my blog, so please have a look. Each of these poems is inspired by a trauma. So it's not easy listening, I'm afraid. The first poem is called Xiphias, which is spelt with a Z or an X. Scholars think that this monster was actually an orca, which is a killer whale, and they are black and white. So that made me think of the nuns at my convent boarding school, which I was sent to when I was age 8. Xiphias. An ectoplasmic blob morphs into a white wimple and black veil, haunting the dark waters of the dormitory. Head a beaked owl, claws telling the rosary, clacking like bones as she rocks back and forth. Behind her back, we snigger at the hairs on her chin, her Irish accent, at the way the teaching nuns parle français, because she doesn't understand. Only fit for laundry and nighttime supervision. She glides down the rows of our beds. Caught talking after lights out, I'm hauled to the corridor to stand shivering and sweating, her face in mine, eyes boring into me. She swipes my head with the back of a hairbrush, as if scouring the bristles off a hog, and it's all my fault. The next poem is on the Byrch Hvalur. The word Hval means whale in Icelandic. So, and this particular monster looks very much like a whale as we would know it, in particular the sperm whale with its enormous square head. When I was in Reykjavik, I went to a flea market and saw some enormous teeth that belonged to a whale. They were for sale. I wouldn't have bought one, they're far too heavy, but besides they're illegal, you're not allowed to take them out of the country. As you know, they are ivory, and people used to make chessmen out of them. So this poem was inspired by the game of chess, and it's also a pantoum, which is a particularly claustrophobic form. Byrch Hvalur's bite. Outmaneuvered as ever by night, you crowd me, blandish me through your lashes. Alone, no one else in sight. Muscles whittled, toned, with lashes of humor, you blandish me. Your lashes searing until my skin is raw muscles, whittled, toned, with lashes craftsmen know, to hone the core, searing until my skin is raw pain. Pleasure, you say, your kiss a bite. Craftsmen know to hone the core. I'm trapped, no point in trying to fight. Pain is pleasure, you say, your kiss a bite. Alone, no one else in sight. I'm trapped, no point in trying to fight. Outmaneuvered every night. The next poem is a bit more humorous, you'll be pleased to hear. It's called Hros Hyfalwr, which means seahorse. And in fact, the monster on the map looks exactly like a giant seahorse. I was thinking of the time when my husband and I were trying to get me pregnant. I was in my 40s, and so we had some difficulties. Like seahorses, fluttering dorsal fins, we spiral, snout to snout, changing colour in sync, a courtship dance, tails hooked to seaweed, swaying in the currents. Little hairs on your skin reflect the light, and I'm charmed by your eyes, which move independently. We check a thermometer, dreading the optimum time become duty. My eggs float away. You'll be pleased to hear that actually I did get pregnant in the end, and we have a lovely son who is now in his 30s. How much time have I got, Mila? One more poem or two?
I have no idea, Steph, so I would say 2.
Oh,
Because I was so, again, enthralled, so do 2.
So this poem is about real Wales. When I was in Húsavík in the north of Iceland, which I do recommend for whale watching. It's the whale watching capital of the world, they say. And they also have a museum, which from the outside looks just like a tin shed, an enormous tin shed. But when you go inside, it's transformed. Inside the Whale Museum, a cavernous space, glaucous light, and I'm walking on the ocean floor while shadowy cetaceans float above. A moan reverberates through the museum. White dashes shoot in bursts across a black cymatic screen. Musical notes defined by the surrounding silence of the ocean. A song which can be heard from Portugal to Iceland. Now drowned, scrambled by engines of container ships, tankers, and ferries. Here in the museum, I follow the moan to a film of you, a hunchback with your calf. Ringed with wrinkles, the light in your eye is the pure, clean flame of oil. I climb up wooden stairs to a platform level with a vast skeleton. I never knew that hidden inside each flipper are finger joints. I remember we are cousins, as now, outstretched towards me, you hold out your hand. So the last poem, back to monsters, is called The Roider, and the Roider looks very much like an ordinary whale as well. I was thinking about the life of whalers, and a friend of mine who comes from Grimsby, which was also a whaling town, told me that the word for the Arctic, which the sailors used, was the white seas. So I've used that in this poem. It's in the voice of a dying whaler who's in a hospice. And I won't tell you what the trauma is he's going through, you can work it out. The other thing I need to say is that the dark red H, which stands for Haval, you can see on the funnels of whaling ships. You can still see them in Reykjavik harbour, and they're the ones that actually go hunting whales. The tourist ships on the other side of the harbour don't have that H. Roida. A dark red H. I once knew the word. On the black funnels of whaling ships, I pray your flesh, dark red, will cure me, but I must have nil by mouth. Strung up, fed with liquids like the gulps of sea that swooshed through your baleen, a vast brush, each cold, rubbery strand jammed tight, trapping thousands of microorganisms as once every sensation, pulse of life filtered through my brain. How many remembered now? Synapses fizzing, blackout. Acrid smoke fluctuates, revealing sunlit trees as I walk through a wood down to the beach, holding my mother's hand. Who is the stranger who seems to know me as she kisses my forehead? A young man comes less often and is impatient to be gone. He seems familiar. One of my shipmates, perhaps, who sniffs the kelp and salt on the wind and hears, as I do, the call of the white seas. Thank you.
Thank you so much for transporting us all the way to Iceland and to seas filled with monsters. And I, of course, have some questions prepared for you. And I was thinking when we met in Ireland, I think one of the first conversations we had was about languages and your interest in Orkney and other languages. So my question is, so I noticed that your work often takes an interest in other languages, and through language, it inhabits landscapes and perspectives. And I wonder what pulls you there and what do you find there?
What pulls me to the languages rather than the countries?
And well, both, I think, because I think in many cases the language is a goal in itself in your work, but also sort of a means of transportation.
Well, I love travel and I love languages. So, and I've had a very peripatetic life. And I kind of believe that if you live in a country, you should learn its language. And so my husband and I moved to Wales, and we in the 1980s, and we lived there for 13 years. So when we were there, I learned Welsh. And at one time I was fluent. I'm kind of forgetting it a bit now. So we left in 2000. But yes, I just adore the sound of words. And I suppose it's a bit like some people collect glittering jewels or objects. I love glittering words, you know, and crunchy words and onomatopoeic words. And whichever country I go to, I always learn at least hello, goodbye, thank you, no. And beautiful. Beautiful is a very useful word. When I was in Indonesia, for instance, I learned bagus, which was extremely useful when I spent 8 hours in a remote village on the side of a mountain where there were no other Europeans and no one spoke English. And the only word I knew in Balinese was bagus, which was beautiful. And they were showing me various things in their compound and I was going, oh, bagus. It went down very well, especially the small baby. You know, the grandmother showed me her grandchild. So, yes, so it's useful. And I just love the sound. And I suppose I often write using landscape to explore more than landscape. I'm not interested in just describing landscape. It has to be exploring human emotions and relationships, and words are all part of that. So
I think you use them to make things come alive, right?
yes, I think sound is important in poetry, and it's,
Yeah.
as I said in my thing about earlier, my little essay,
Yeah.
poetry is an experience. I think, you know, you have to hear it, feel it, and it's a bit like going to a concert and experiencing the music. Or this is a bit basic, but I always say it's the difference between reading the recipe of a cake and eating the cake.
Exactly. So another question I have that just popped into my head when you were reading your poems just now, and I noticed there were so many whales, and then I thought, but these weren't the first poems you wrote about whales, because I remember a poem, I think, Dear Blubber. So I was wondering, do you have some special connection to whales?
Oh, I've hang on, I've got that poem in this collection. I just didn't read it tonight.
Oh, I seem to remember that you read it when you were first reading for Poetry Lit as a featured poet, but maybe I just sort of misconstrued. But I was just wondering, do you have a special connection to whales?
No, I just love them.
No.
And I love Iceland. And I mean, if you go to Iceland, you can't not go whale watching.
Right.
In fact, we tried, my husband and I, on our honeymoon in Nantucket, we wanted to see a whale. And people said it's £25 or something. And in those days, we were totally broke. We couldn't afford it because they said, and you might not see a whale. So ever since then, you know, I've been wanting to see a whale. And also on my trips to Orkney, I've always had a look out on the various ferries I've taken. I've never seen a whale, though I've known they're there. And I've written poems about, you know, though I can't see you, I know you're there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was amazing to actually, I saw a humpback breaching
That's-
in Husavik.
Oh, that's so cool. I don't think I ever, maybe in the distance, but they're amazing animals, and I think there's something quite special about seeing one. So, plus David Blyman very wittily just said in the chat, Steph's just told us she lived in Wales for 13 years, so there you have your connection to Wales, but then a different one. So, Steph, you'll be doing also a poetry in session tomorrow at 3 o'clock British time, hosting again three wonderful poets. So, if you want to see more and hear Steph host her own session, then do check in tomorrow, 3 o'clock, on our Facebook or YouTube page. And I think now comes the moment I kind of have to hand over the hosting to you, Steph, right?
Yes, I have to introduce you. Just give me a few minutes
No, no worries.
to find the, here we are.
Who are you again?
Who are you? Before I introduce you, Mila, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be part of Poetry Lit. And it was such a pleasure to meet you at Anna McKerrick all those years ago. And who would have thought it would have borne such fruit? And it's been wonderful, not only Poetry Lit, but meeting up in Rotterdam and when you came to Stanza, St Andrews. And I hope we'll keep that up. And
I
also
hope so too.
Amsterdam, mustn't forget that, or Amsterdam, as you would
Amsterdam.
yes. And I want to also say how much I think everybody's appreciate your warm, welcoming atmosphere that you have created
Thank
in
you.
Poetry Lit. And everybody's appreciated that. And it's particularly helped the open micers.
Thank you.
So I shall miss it. But there you go.
Thanks.
Enough's enough. So, introduction for Mila. Mila van der Haver lives in Utrecht in the Netherlands. She is just back from Medellin in Colombia. She writes poetry that won't stay put. Her latest book, starring her wayward imaginary friends, Ox and Mandarin, are living proof of this.
Thank you, Steph. And so I've been very naughty, but because I changed up a little bit of my poems just right now because I thought I want to read, to start, I want to read a poem that I wrote in Anna McCarrick, and I think I wrote it on that day that Steph and I met, and I thought that would be a nice sort of call out to where, in a sense, this started, and it's called Little Thistle Blues. Little Thistle Blues. When I grow up, I want to be small again. Small like a rainforest, small like the letters on the back of your hand. Blues on skin, a spell against forgetting. I want to be small like time is small when you notice other things, like how spittle moves along with her lips when she speaks her truth, like how she carves a kitchen into being and dwells there. I have been many things recently, a mountain gorge, the slit in the eye of a sheep, a tendency to over-explain the color yellow, but never not small, and I miss it. When we are small, we should be simple, a circle that doesn't go anywhere, a sermon with no promise of heaven, bother weeds. When we are simple, we can say, there, little thistle, give me your song, open your eyes, allow the wind to rustle your skin as it has done mine. Now, of course, Ox and Mandarin also have to make an appearance in this reading. And I'm reading, so Ox and Mandarin, the book, is kind of centered around the zodiac. It's kind of a hidden zodiac. So the poem that I'm reading now corresponds with, I think, where we are now in the zodiac, Virgo. And it's called Ox and Mandarin, a certain liminality. Ox and Mandarin have fawned, like others before them have fawned, by the bend of a river broken out of bound. Some monsters are forgotten, even before they came, while others grow cold alongside a raging stream, like polished stones, like shards of some ancient restless culture. Everything begets everything. The mud becomes the deer, the sand a tower of sun, a golden rod, to point time, to point out slender heaven, the elders would say, or perhaps the path of those that dance in between. Like the lily of the valley, like the great grave meadow that covers what you care for, in rare peaks, like teeth, of a forgotten mastodon, in its great spell of amber. An ox turns, a mandarin turns, and a red bird dances a warning of common grief, of an uncouth procession of simple bygones once we sleep. But ox goes, and mandarin goes, down along the trail, down to where a whiteness waits, to bind it all, to seal it all in flax and cloth, in garlands, to secure any name given in the blood. Yes, everything marks everything down to its beginning, and there are as many oracles as winter sees, and each speaks an evident and individual truth. That mandarin is shingle and restless, a gun of orange. That ox must fall beyond the silken, the esteemed, the festive road. That stone crosses are the most severe. They can't be moved. They can't be altered. They just stand there as a center for ox and mandarin to walk around on. And there's exertion and wetness and the shaming call that comes from victims as they are led to believe, which ox fears more than a knife. For the knife is vessel and the voice is a sign by which the chosen are known. And mandarin quietly mistakes death for what it is, a pastime, because you can always retract back into your own skin. And finally, I'm going to screen share because I want to read for you the first poem I actually shared on Poetry Lit. And let's see if this works. I think it does. So I think this is the first time I did anything with image, and I now added a little sound to it. So let's put it back to the beginning. It's called Give Me 1,000 Faces and I'll Wear Them All. Some grow lost, some grow other, some girl mistaken, some girl adjacent, some girl firm, some girl touched, some girl untouched, some girl meaningful, some girls played, some girl shipwrecked, some girl rabbit-faced, some girl moist, some girl nocturnal, some girl swaying in the wind, some girl a hanged god, some girl pining, some girl harvest, some girl again and again, some girl two-headed, leering, some girl a flagship, some girl finding the path, some girl spiral, some girl changing mysteries, some girl has high-rise living, some girl flattened like paper, like paradise, some girl on the map, some girl reloaded, some girl with some girl heart-shaped, some girl boned, some girl confessing, some girl trapped with a soul, some girl organic, some girl running foul, some girl with eyes of honey, some girl sore, some girl hunting call, some girl come morning, some girl cash flow, some girl in the system, some girl herself, some girl rain dancing, some girl flower bed, some girl parlay, some girl fearsome, some girl trapped, some girl misreading, some girl writing some girl a song, some girl missing the gentlest, the earliest, some girl winning, some girl straining, some girl a mosque, some girl a letdown, some girl a believer, some girl moonshine, some girl, no matter what. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thanks.
Now, Mila,
Yes.
I believe I have to ask you a question now.
Yes.
But before I do, I'd just like to do another round of applause and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am so happy that you read Give Me a Thousand Faces and I'll Wear Them All as
You-
your final poem, because it's the first poem I ever heard you read on Poetry Lit. And it's the first I met you for the first time on Poetry Lit, thanks to Steph, who invited me along. So I'm going to ask you a question about Give Me a Thousand Faces and I'll Wear Them All. First of all, I love the title because it's so different to the rest of the poem. I love the structure of some girl moist, some girl fearsome, fearsome. So I'd like to know I'd like to know how the poem came about, really. Was it the title first? Did some girl come? So I'd like to know how the title comes,
Yeah.
but also the second part is I also want to know with the anaphora and stuff like that, I want to know how you decided which words to put after some girl. And did that take you was it random? Was it, it doesn't feel random to me. So I'd like to hear about those two things.
Yeah, and I think they're connected because I have to think back. So I know where I wrote it, and vocal comes into play there because we used to go on writing retreats together in a castle in the east of the Netherlands where there was like a strong regime. The castle was sort of owned or managed by monks, and even though you didn't have to be a monk to stay there, there was sort of a regime of order and meals at certain times. And well, I think we both responded very well to that regime. And so I always got into a creative mode there. But I think that particular time I was also feeling a bit ill, so that may sort of explain why it all becomes a bit of a mush. But the title is a reference to Joseph Campbell. So Joseph Campbell wrote The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and in this book he describes the monomyth, so the myth or the story structure that sort of underlies all myths. But the thing is with the monomyth that it's very centered on men. And there isn't really, it isn't really suited or tailored towards women, even though Campbell apparently said later that it should be, but he never got around to it. So I think that sort of inspired the poem. And I was thinking about, I think some girl was there, some girl was there right from the beginning. I think the title first, and then maybe some girl, and then sometimes with a poem you just go into a flow. So some poems you have to think about really, really hard, but this one just came. Maybe also because I was still a bit feverish or fluish, and it's sort of, so I think I just wrote it in one go. And I think all the words after Some Girl just sort of came. And what I wanted, or I think intended to do, is sort of show all the masks or faces you could wear as a girl that are not the mask or faces that society wants you to have, right? So be fearsome, fearsome, to be, moonshine or a hanged god. So it's kind of a mythic reimagining for me, in that sense.
I love it. I love the I remember the Some Girl Fearsome Fearsome from the very first time you read it. And also we were all wearing masks around that time as well. So it was really kind of apt when you first did it. If I may ask another one, I guess I've probably got time to do that. So obviously you've then brought that to life on a video. And one of the things that I find remarkable about you, Mila, is that actually you take poetry into so many different directions. And I don't just mean by doing videos, but also, putting on Poetry Lit, going over to Medellin and being, doing workshops over there. And then obviously it's not just the workshops that not just the stuff that we're presenting tomorrow in the evening. You've also got a Spanish version of this as well, a Spanish language version of this as well. So I just wondered what bit of that, what's your favorite bit of that and why?
I think everything. So I was talking about zodiac. My star sign is Gemini, and you know what they say about Gemini, that we are, easily distracted, going from one interest to the another interest. So I don't think that really applies to me, but I do like to mix things up a little bit, and I like how everything starts feeding other things, even with my day job. So I used to keep my day job and all the poetry stuff like very separated, thinking, so you rent me for 8 hours, and at 5 o'clock I'm free to pursue my own calling. But in my work, more and more, I've begun to work with creativity, and I found I could use what I learned in writing and poetry and workshops to use in my work, and the other way around. I found that I was giving workshops at work, and I, built a practice that I could also use giving my poetry workshop. So I think I need every little bit of it. I like writing poetry because I think at heart I'm an introvert. That may sound weird because I'm very comfortable hosting and presenting, but I do need my time alone after. But then once I've been alone for a while and I've written for a while, I like to do something else and connect to people again. And so the last time I was in Anna McCarrick, which was in June, someone um, someone sort of mentioned to me this identity that's called art, and it stands for artist, researcher, teacher. And sort of offhandedly, she said, and that's what you are. And I was thinking, like, I didn't know I was that. And then I thought, I think that's what I am: artist, researcher, teacher. So, artist, the writing part, researcher, like reading the Campbell books and sort of researching creativity, and teacher in the sense that I love to do workshops and share experiences. So yeah, in that sense, I think my answer to your question is everything.
And that's why you do it all, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. I also saw that Sukima, one of the poets you'll be hearing tomorrow, so he sent me a private message, and I hope he doesn't mind that I will answer it now in public, because he is asking me if I am going to answer my own question about how poetry is going to change the world. And I think that's a very good question. And in fact, I am, but not tonight, but tomorrow night. So tomorrow we have several poetry in sessions, which will be hosted by all the wonderful Poetry Lit hosts that you have heard here tonight. There will be workshops that I will host on Zoom, and we will do a closing ceremony at 7 UK time. And there I will read the essay I wrote about how poetry can change the world, which I rewrote based on the answers I got from the poets in Poetry Lit. So tune in tomorrow night. Great setup there, Sukima. Thank you. So I got to promote our closing ceremony. We have Poetry Lit has always been a place for open micers, and I remember, and David Blyman kindly reminded me the other day in an email that I said Poetry Lit is a safe space for shameless self-promotion, and we're proud of it. But we've always been a place for open micers, for people to take their first steps on the open mic, or for people to read. Well, they were very seasoned on the open mic and poetry readings, but we're very proud of the space that we've been able to provide for people. So I'm very happy that we have 3 open micers tonight, all of whom are regulars. So they've been on our open mic before. So we have Doreen, we have Linda, and Harvey. And just to mention to the open micers, we are on festival rules tonight, so a little bit different than we normally are. So you each have time for 1 poem, 3 minutes max, but I'm sure you will be able to manage. So Doreen, may I invite you up to our virtual stage, please?
Sorry, I just had to get a tissue. Sorry. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on tonight. So I have a poem called Bee Dress. It is after Girl with a Bee Dress, image by Maggie Taylor. For your 16th birthday, you got a dress made from a swarm of live bees, pulled in at the waist with a drawstring, which you were made to wear on special occasions. If you refused to put on this carefully chosen gift, you were told what an evil creature you were. So you wore the dress, spoke quietly, moved slowly, didn't laugh and didn't cry, to avoid provoking the bees, to avoid being stung. People said how sweet you were and how demure you looked in your honey bronze dress, edged with black needlepoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen, and thank you for attending so many times to Poetry Lit. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So Linda, you're up next.
Thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. I just have to say, this has been a wonderful experience. I don't know how I will replace it. I will read 1 poem. I'm from Barbados in the Caribbean, and you may know that the CARICOM is focused on the whole issue of reparations. This poem is to lend my voice to all of that. Planted in Strange. This is a story I will tell you. Come back tomorrow and I will tell it again. In the time before now, we pleaded to the oceans. Gnash your wave throats against our salty scaves or salty cals, where we stand planted in strange. We can't hear you, my ancestors, your drums muffled in seawater. We dreamed, captured you in oil drums, muted the steel of our pan to soothe our children into lullaby, hold their breaths. This is the story I should tell you. We were human once, ancestral names known, fused with land and life. Then we were money, currency traded for long guns, chattel, beam of real estate, asset in new lands, insurance to keep the cotton clothing, collateral to kings, sugar's birth mother. This is the story, my severed hand in the mill, clawed to write, curled to hug the voodoo inside the obeah, inside the orisha, inside me. Until I laugh the dance, the story has not been told. Come back tomorrow and I will tell you. Poem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda, and you too. Thank you so much for being here so many times with us. Thank you. So to Harvey falls the honor or the duty to close off our open mic and this opening night. So there you go, Harvey.
Okay. First, I'd like to extend an invitation that I've posted in the chat for Artful Dodgers Poetry, an open mic series I've been hosting for the last 8 years. And our next reading will be a hybrid reading on the Saturday following this Saturday. So take a look if you would. This one is addressed to my father, but for my mother, whose birthday was just a couple of days ago and whose death date I simply cannot recall. It's called It's Not Your Fault. Downwind of Stern's pickle factory, mother melted butter in a frying pan, not yet 65. There's nothing you or I could have done about it, husband or son. She was no toddler on training blocks to require one of us to call and ride shotgun. After convalescence and post-surgical depression, she insisted on going out alone. Who knew? Driving unaccompanied those few fateful miles to the mall. Neither of us could have known, how could we, that an aerosol can from the Stop and Shop Pam hairspray, a family-sized spritzer of SPF 100 suntan lotion, or, as detectives have been known to say, as may hereafter be determined by forensics, would grow ever more heated on the passenger seat, soaking up summer sun until it burst, going all kablooey nova, turning luminous housewife into a flambeau, exploding without warning, making a funeral pyre of the car and her with its consumptive fire. While talking heads debated global warming on the radio, a seer could not have foreseen this, and neither you nor I could have foreseen this end, and of course, in the end, neither of us did. I don't recall the make or model, probably Chevy or Olds, as you proudly allowed only fresh off the lot Detroiters with NASA-worthy gizmos in the driveway. Made in America being the way to go, or so, hand over heart, you swore. Had you been there, helpless, where she stalled and burned, fumbling, I suspected, her seatbelt, you might have rethought your position on American design. General Motors, Ford, Daimler, Chrysler, our big three car makers, those made in America, two tough locks and windows, standing firm against the efforts of sooty-faced good Samaritans to break her out of the screaming car. Efforts that failed so miserably when safety glass, once touted as a selling point, proved all too resistant to their frenzied fists. It is not your fault they could not save her any more, I must and do believe, than it is mine. Mother, wife, survivor of 2 open heart surgeries, perhaps she just couldn't be saved. It's not as if we didn't care. For my part, after some robo-detective dialed to say my father needed me, I thought, as you must have done, if only I could have been there, I would have kicked, punched, hammered that motherfucking glass to shards and fetched her for you from the fire, to rise phoenix-like in her accustomed place. At the dinner table, to serve pfannkuchen and chicken paprika, followed by a slice of the best chocolate babka bar none on Long Island. And if the glass proved stronger even than adrenaline born of breast milk, I would have blessed her as a sun might against the coming darkness of a natural night, and said for all of us, for all who knew and loved her, but for you we would be nothing, less than nothing, certainly my sisters and I. Clump clay animated by your hands and care, putting all other mothers to shame, their children haphazardly thrown on the wheel and hurriedly glazed over. All praise to you, then, for shaping us this way. Never was there ceramicist with so deft a touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you. So a big hand to all our open micers, to Harvey, to Linda, to Doreen, and a big hand to my other fellow poets, hosts, organizers, friends, to Ian, to Lydia, to Walco, to Stephanie. Thank you for joining us for this opening night. I hope you will all join us tomorrow for the Poetry Lit Festival, which will be live streamed, so don't worry about getting a Zoom link. You can just go to our Facebook or our YouTube page and find whatever's going on there live streamed. Go to our Facebook page, you'll find the program. So I hope, well, I won't see you tomorrow, but I hope you will all see us tomorrow. So thank you again for joining us, and see you around.